Arthur Schopenhauer was a German philosopher born on the 22nd of February, 1795, in the city of Danzig, which is now Gdansk, Poland. He came from a wealthy merchant family but was not inclined toward the business world. His father, Heinrich Floris Schopenhauer, passed away when Arthur was 17, leaving him an inheritance that allowed him to pursue his intellectual interests without financial concerns. From a young age, Schopenhauer exhibited a fascination with philosophy, and he was especially influenced by the works of Immanuel Kant, as well as the pessimism of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the romanticism of the early German idealists. Schopenhauer's major philosophical work, The World as Will and Representation, was published in the year 1821, and it would go on to have a profound impact on existentialism, nihilism, and psychoanalysis. Schopenhauer's philosophical project was built upon the distinction between the world as representation and the world as will. He borrowed heavily from Kant's ideas, particularly his epistemology, but Schopenhauer critiqued Kant's transcendental idealism by emphasizing the concept of the will. According to Schopenhauer, Kant's theory of the noumenon, the thing in itself, remained an abstract and inaccessible concept. Schopenhauer, however, offered a novel and radical perspective, arguing that the thing in itself is not an unknowable entity but rather the will, a blind, irrational, and ceaseless striving that underlies all reality. Schopenhauer's philosophy posited that everything in the world, from nature to human beings, is an expression of this will, an irrational force that is never at rest and leads to suffering. The primary text in which Schopenhauer presents his ideas is The World as Will and Representation. The book is divided into 4 main parts, each focusing on different aspects of his philosophy. In the first part, Schopenhauer discusses the nature of the world as representation. Drawing on Kant, he explains that we can only know the world as it appears to us, through our senses and mental faculties. The world, as it is represented to us, is a mere appearance, or phenomenon, and cannot be equated with the thing in itself. In the second part of the book, Schopenhauer shifts his focus to the concept of the will. For him, the will is the essence of reality, manifesting in both human beings and nature. Schopenhauer's view of the will is somewhat pessimistic. It is a force that endlessly strives without ever achieving true satisfaction, leading to suffering and torment. The will is fundamentally blind, purposeless, and indifferent to the needs and desires of individuals. Schopenhauer's third part of The World as Will and Representation explores the relationship between the individual and the will. He argues that human beings are deeply connected to the will, which manifests itself in their desires, actions, and motivations. For Schopenhauer, the self is nothing more than an individual will, and the essence of human existence is a constant striving toward satisfaction. This perpetual striving, however, inevitably leads to frustration and suffering. In this context, Schopenhauer introduces the concept of asceticism as a potential solution to human suffering. He suggests that by renouncing worldly desires and cultivating an attitude of detachment, individuals can free themselves from the will's tyrannical grasp. This idea of renunciation would later influence the existentialist thought of figures like Friedrich Nietzsche and, to some extent, Sigmund Freud. Schopenhauer's fourth and final section of The World as Will and Representation is dedicated to the arts and aesthetics, which he sees as a potential escape from the suffering caused by the will. He suggests that through art, individuals can momentarily transcend the will and experience a state of pure contemplation. Art allows individuals to perceive the world as something detached from their personal desires and motivations, offering a temporary respite from the constant striving that characterizes human existence. In particular, Schopenhauer elevates music as the highest form of art because it directly expresses the essence of the will. Unlike other art forms, which are merely representations of objects in the world, music transcends the phenomenal world and communicates the primal force of the will in a direct and unmediated way. For Schopenhauer, this experience of aesthetic contemplation is one of the few ways in which human beings can achieve relief from the endless cycle of suffering. Schopenhauer's pessimism about life and the human condition is one of the most distinctive aspects of his philosophy. He argued that human existence is essentially characterized by suffering, which is the result of the will's ceaseless striving. This view of life as suffering was in contrast to the more optimistic philosophies of his time, such as those of the German idealists like Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, whose system sought to reconcile history and the world with reason. Schopenhauer rejected this optimistic view, believing instead that life is fundamentally futile. The will, in his view, drives individuals to pursue goals that ultimately lead to nothing but disappointment and suffering. Even when we achieve our desires, the satisfaction is fleeting, and the will quickly propels us toward new desires and new suffering. Despite his pessimism, Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a unique perspective on human existence. His emphasis on the will as the driving force behind all phenomena makes his thought deeply rooted in metaphysical inquiry. Schopenhauer's concept of the will anticipates later developments in psychology, particularly the work of Sigmund Freud, who also sought to understand the underlying forces driving human behavior. In addition, Schopenhauer's emphasis on asceticism and the renunciation of desires influenced various philosophical and religious traditions, including Buddhism and Christian mysticism. His ideas would also have a lasting impact on existentialist thinkers like Nietzsche, who would challenge Schopenhauer's pessimism with his affirmation of life and the will to power. One of the most significant influences of Schopenhauer's philosophy was on the field of aesthetics. Schopenhauer's view of art as a means of escaping the will and achieving a state of pure contemplation was highly original. His understanding of music as the highest form of art would go on to influence later composers, including Richard Wagner, who saw in Schopenhauer's ideas a deeper understanding of the human condition. Schopenhauer's writings on aesthetics have had a lasting impact on the philosophy of art, and his emphasis on the importance of beauty and artistic experience as a temporary escape from suffering has continued to resonate with thinkers and artists throughout history. Schopenhauer's philosophy, though often seen as dark and pessimistic, also contains a recognition of the possibility of transcendence. His idea of asceticism and renunciation offers a way out of the endless cycle of striving and suffering. By freeing oneself from the will, individuals can attain a state of peace and freedom from the constant demands of desire. In this sense, Schopenhauer's thought represents a kind of existential escape, albeit one that comes through resignation and renunciation rather than through the pursuit of self-affirmation. While Schopenhauer's vision of human existence may be bleak, it also contains an awareness of the human capacity for self-awareness and spiritual transcendence. Schopenhauer died on the 21st of September, 1860, in Frankfurt. His death marked the end of a life devoted to exploring the dark aspects of human existence and the metaphysical foundations of reality. Though his ideas were not widely recognized during his lifetime, they would go on to influence many important philosophical movements in the 20th century. From existentialism to psychoanalysis, Schopenhauer's exploration of the human condition, the will, and the nature of suffering continues to resonate with thinkers and readers alike. His work remains a central text in the study of metaphysics, aesthetics, and the philosophy of life. In conclusion, Arthur Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation remains one of the most significant philosophical works of the 19th century. Its exploration of the nature of reality, the human condition, and the role of the will in shaping existence provides a deeply pessimistic yet insightful vision of life. Schopenhauer's ideas continue to influence contemporary philosophy and art, and his emphasis on the irrational, striving, and suffering at the heart of existence remains relevant today. His unique approach to metaphysics, aesthetics, and ethics challenges us to confront the fundamental nature of reality and human existence, urging us to reflect on the ways in which we can find meaning and solace in an otherwise indifferent and striving world.